For most of my life, I thought smart people were just born that way, that they had some kind of internal library the rest of us didn't get access to. And honestly, that belief was comfortable. It meant I didn't have to try too hard. It meant the gap between me and the people I admired was just fate. But that wasn't the truth. That was just a story I told myself so I didn't have to sit with the discomfort of actually thinking. Here's what most people do when they decide to get smarter. They consume. They watch 3-hour documentaries. They download 12 books they'll never open past chapter 2. They save articles into folders that become digital graveyards. They subscribe to newsletters, follow accounts, collect podcasts like they're building an archive of the person they wish they were. And I'm not judging that. I did it for years. But there's a difference between feeding your mind and actually feeding your mind. One feels productive. The other is productive. And most of us have spent years doing the first one while genuinely believing we were doing the second. Information is not understanding. It never was. You can read every book ever written about grief and still have no idea how to sit with someone who is losing everything. You can memorize the theory of courage and still freeze when it matters. The information enters. But something else, something harder and slower, has to happen before it actually becomes part of how you think. So why don't most people make that leap? Why do they stay stuck in the cycle of consuming without ever arriving at real understanding? I think it's because understanding is uncomfortable in a way that consuming is not. When you're watching a video, you feel smart. The ideas are flowing. Someone else has already done the hard thinking and packaged it cleanly for you. It feels like progress. But the moment you close the laptop and try to actually think through an idea on your own, the feeling disappears. You realize you can't quite reconstruct it. The edges are blurry. The logic has gaps you didn't notice when someone else was walking you through it. And most people, when they hit that blurriness, assume the content wasn't good enough. So they go find more content, better content, a cleaner explanation. And the cycle continues. What they don't realize is that the blurriness was the lesson. That confusion wasn't a detour. It was the destination. The shift happened for me when I realized that understanding isn't something you receive. It's something you build. You can watch 1,000 videos about swimming and still drown in 2 feet of water. The information was never the point. The thinking was the point. Real education, the kind that quietly rewires how you see the world, doesn't happen while you're consuming. It happens in the silence after. When you close the book and sit with a single idea. When you try to explain something in your own words and realize you can't. When a question keeps you up at night, not because you're anxious, but because you genuinely don't know the answer yet. That discomfort is not a sign that you're behind. That discomfort is learning. And here's something worth sitting with. Intelligence from the outside looks like talent. It looks effortless. It looks like someone who just gets it. But from the inside, it almost never feels that way. From the inside, it feels like confusion held long enough to become clarity. It feels like patience with yourself when the idea won't come together. It feels like returning to the same question for the 5th time, not because you're slow, but because you're finally being honest about how little you understood the first 4 times. The people we call geniuses weren't always the fastest. They were often just the most willing to stay confused a little longer than everyone else. Richard Feynman, one of the most brilliant physicists of the 20th century, understood this in a way most people don't. He had a simple rule. If he couldn't explain something in plain language, it meant he didn't truly understand it yet. Not that the topic was too complex, not that other people weren't smart enough to follow. It meant he still had work to do. He would take a concept and write it out as if he were teaching it to someone who had never encountered it before. And the moment the explanation broke down, the moment he reached for jargon or skipped a step because it felt too hard to articulate, that was the exact location of the gap. He would go back, study more carefully, fill the hole, then try again. What strikes me about that isn't the technique, it's the honesty. Most people, when they can't explain something clearly, blame the complexity of the subject. Feynman blamed himself. And that small shift in accountability is what separated him from almost everyone around him. So if you want to actually educate yourself, here's what that looks like in practice. Read to question, not to collect. When an idea grabs you, stop moving. Don't highlight it and keep going. Ask yourself why it matters, what it connects to, where it might be wrong. A single honest question is worth 10 highlighted passages you'll never return to. Write before you think you're ready. Not to publish, not to impress anyone, just to find out what you actually believe. Writing forces a kind of clarity that thinking alone rarely produces. It turns vague impressions into real thoughts, and real thoughts into things you can actually use. You will be surprised, maybe even unsettled, by how many things you thought you understood until you tried to put them into a single, coherent paragraph. And third, stay with one idea longer than feels comfortable. We live in a culture that rewards speed. Move fast, read more, stay updated. But depth has never come from speed. Take one concept and just sit with it. For a day, a week. Let it surface in unexpected places. Let it change shape as you turn it over. That slow process of an idea becoming familiar, almost personal, that's when real understanding finally settles in. Here's the thing no one tells you about self-education. The goal was never to know more than other people. It was never about having the right answer ready or being the most well-read person in the room. The goal, the real one, was to think more clearly than you used to notice things you would have walked past a year ago, to hold complexity without needing to simplify it too quickly. That kind of mind isn't built in a library. It isn't built through a reading list or a morning routine or the right note-taking system. It's built in the quiet, slightly uncomfortable moments when you stop asking what to learn next and start sitting honestly with what you still don't understand. And maybe that's where it's always been waiting.